Good morning. This is the time and place for the zoning administrator hearings for March 18th, 2008. My name is Wolfgang Kraus, and I'll be your hearing officer today. We have two cases, and the exhibits, or at least most of them, are located on the panels directly behind me. We have a variance case and a conditional use permit case. So with regard to the variance, under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.43 of the Glendale Municipal Code, a variance can be granted if four required findings are present. And those are, number one, that the strict application of the ordinance would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship inconsistent with the general purposes and intent of the ordinance. Number two, that there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved or to the intended use or development of the property that do not apply generally to other property in the same zone or neighborhood. And number three, that the granting of the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in such zone or neighborhood in which the property is located. And four, that the granting of the variance will not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance. And with regard to the conditional use permit on the agenda, that would be under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.42 of the Glendale Municipal Code. A conditional use permit shall be granted if four required findings are present, and they are, number one, that the proposed use will be consistent with the elements and objectives of the general plan. Number two, that the use and its associated structures and facilities will not be detrimental to the public health or safety, the general welfare, or the environment. Number three, that the use and facilities will not adversely affect or conflict with adjacent uses or impede the normal development of surrounding property. And four, that adequate public and private facilities such as utilities, landscaping, parking spaces, and traffic circulation measures are or will be provided for the proposed use. Also, for applications involving the sale, serving, or consumption of alcoholic beverages, there are also 5 criteria that have to be considered in making the findings that I just mentioned. And those are, number one, that the census tract with, if there's a census tract with more than the recommended maximum concentration level of on-sale or off-sale uses, as recommended by the California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control, that such use does not or will not tend to intensify or otherwise contribute to the adverse impacts on the surrounding area caused by such overconcentration. And number two, that crime reporting district location of the existing or proposed use with a crime rate which exceeds 20% of the city average for Part 1 crimes, as reported by the Glendale Police Department, that such use will not tend to encourage or intensify crime within the district. Number three, that the existing or proposed use does not or will not adversely affect any church, public or private school or college, daycare facility, public park, library, hospital, or residential use within the surrounding area. And four, that adequate parking and loading facilities are or will be provided for the existing or proposed use, or other reasonable alternatives satisfy the transportation and parking needs of the existing or proposed use. And five, that notwithstanding considerations of the criteria in subsections 1 through 4 above, the existing or proposed use does not or does or will serve a public necessity or public convenience purpose for the area. And if the evidence presented in the application and at the hearing meets the criteria for the whichever case it is, then the zoning administrator can approve or approve with conditions the case. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request will be denied. Now, with regard to public notice, notification of this hearing was accomplished by the use of public notices which were mailed to property owners located within 500 feet of the subject property, physically posted on the site in question, and placed in the local newspaper. Now, the hearing will proceed as follows. First, I'll read a description of the application. I'm not going to do that. Then I'll ask the applicant to come forward, give me the name and address, and make a presentation within a 15-minute time limit. After that, I'll ask others in support or in opposition to the application and interested parties to come forward and give a brief presentation. Again, also state your name and mailing address, and I'll give you a 3-minute time limit. And if necessary, I'll give the applicant a chance to make any closing comments within a 5-minute time period to address anything that's been raised earlier in the hearing. Then I'll close the case and take it under submission. Actually, before I do all that, I'll have the case planner give a brief overview of the case. Then I'll ask the applicant to come forward. Now, the decision itself, that'll be after the hearing. It'll be made in writing, be in the form of a letter, which is sent to the applicant and to everyone who's responded to the public notice, either by speaking here or providing us with some written communication, who've also given us their name and mailing address. Now, the date of the decision is the date that's on the letter, because you can appeal under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.62 of the Glendale Municipal Code. You can appeal the decision to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the date of the decision. Anyone wishing to appeal can go over to our Building and Safety Department at the Permit Services Center and pick up an appeal form and file it within a timely manner. And if you're going to be speaking, please pardon me, fill out one of the speaker cards and provide it to our staff. And in addition to being on television, we're recording the proceedings today on tape as part of the public record. Okay. So let me open the first case, which is case number PCUP 2009-001. The applicant is KO Oil Company, care of Bruce Evans, Esquire. Property owner is KO Oil Company, and the case planner is Milka Toledo. And this is an application for a conditional use permit to allow the sales of beer and wine for off-site consumption at an existing food store / mini market located within a gas station located at 475 West Colorado Street in the SFMU, which is the Commercial Residential Mixed Use Zone, described as portions of lots 19, 20, and 21, Block M, Glendale Valley View Tract. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Toledo to give a brief overview of the case.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Again, as you stated, the location is 475 West Colorado Street. It is located on the northeast corner of Pacific Avenue and Colorado Street. It currently includes a service station, and it includes the mini market, and it has also a non-operating car wash, self-service car wash there. There were no major concerns from the city departments, so therefore there are none really that I'm going to go over at all.
Okay.
But what I will do is go over a brief analysis of the project and then highlight the recommendation. Again, the existing food store has been operating without a valid conditional use permit for approximately 4 years. The previous conditional use permit was granted in 1999, and it was valid for a period of 5 years, and that would have been until December 31st of 2004. At that time, the applicant was again required to reapply. For this reason, they are here today trying to correct that violation of operating without a conditional use permit. The applicant is here so they can go over as to why that occurred or why the lapse of 4 years. Again, the retail food store is permitted in this zone, and it is in keeping with the city's general plan. And the sale, service, and consumption of alcoholic beverages does require it is conditionally permitted, and that's why conditional use permit is required. According to the police department, the census tract in which the property is located allows for 3 off-sale alcoholic establishments, or alcohol establishments rather. Based on this information, the over-concentration of licenses does not appear to be an issue because this type of use is suitable in the downtown area. There is a high percentage of crime-related activity in the area. However, according to the police department, most of the crimes in the census tract was reported in the Glendale Galleria, which is approximately 0.7 miles to the east. The subject site had 5 calls for police service within the last calendar year, and 4 out of the 5 calls were for false alarms. And another item is that significant crime-related incidents have not been reported at the subject site. Staff believes that all the findings can be made in a positive manner due to the project's small scale, and for this reason, again, the staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit, but we do have 2 conditions, or in this case suggestions, for the hearing officer, and that would be that no incidents related to the sale of beer and wine has been reported at this location, and therefore staff would not object to the sale of beer and wine for off-site consumption during the hours permitted by the State Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control, and require a renewal of a conditional use permit in 3 years. That concludes my presentation, and if you have any questions, I would be available.
On the concentration level,
Yes.
formula says 3, and including this establishment, how many are there?
That would be 4.
There's 4 including this one.
Right.
Okay.
And based on Part 1 crime statistics for the census, there were 686 crimes, which is 689% above the citywide average of 87. I know that number seems a bit high, but again, it's due to the fact that the Galleria is also included in that census.
Yeah. Okay. All right, thank you. Then let me ask the applicant to come forward, Bruce Evans, and your presentation as to why this should be granted.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Bruce Evans, Solomon, Saltzman, and Jameson, 426 Culver Boulevard, Playa del Rey, California. I'd like to start by thanking planning staff. They've been great. Initially, I was working with Chris Baxter closely on this project, and then Ms. Toledo took it over for Chris. I'll go back because I want to apologize and explain a little bit the lapse in the CUP. My client, the applicant, KO Oil, and their parent company, ConocoPhillips, took over this location around the middle of 2004. Actually, it was a little earlier. I believe it was the end of 2003. The city sent a notice in 2003 directly to the gas station itself, but never to the corporate headquarters. And the city didn't follow up until several years recently. When ConocoPhillips found out about it, they hired me to fix it. And they asked, how did this happen? We're normally so on top of this. How did we not know the CUP had been renewed? So I went back and looked at the file with Chris, and we figured out that notice had only went to the gas station. It was around that same time, the change in ownership. And ConocoPhillips just wasn't aware of it because it never got transmitted to the corporation. So we apologize.
Okay.
As soon as they found out about it, they took corrective action. Moving forward, this use was established in 1994. It has, although undergone a few corporate changes in ownership, the essential use has remained unchanged. Beer and wine has been sold continuously at the premises. The CUP has been renewed at various points, and at each point of the renewal, it's been noted by the zoning administrator that the site has no history of causing adverse nuisance-related impacts. That continues up to present. So we have an overwhelmingly positive staff report. I believe that's because of the corporate policies of ConocoPhillips. Now, there has been a change in ownership since the application was filed.
Okay.
In essence, a stock transfer. I have Chris Baxter with me from Pacific Convenience and Fuels, the new owner. I also have Steve Sue.
We like Chris Baxter. That's a good name.
Chris Baxter. I'm sorry. Mr. Martin.
Okay, I thought we had another Chris
No,
Baxter.
no.
Okay.
So, anyway, Steve Sue is with us today. Steve was with ConocoPhillips and KO Oil. He is now with the new owner.
This is property owner or business owner?
Both one and the same.
One and the same. Okay. And who would that be now?
That is Pacific Convenience and Fuels. We provided information to Ms. Toledo. It was attached to the staff report that explains in detail the change in ownership.
Okay.
In any event,
Do you know how they intend to keep track of this? Because this is a common issue of we have a conditional use permit which has conditions which a lot of operators seem to forget about, including the time limit. So do you think has the new owner indicated to you, since you're not going to be running the operation, how they plan on keeping track of the conditions, including any time limits that we might impose?
One of the things that the new owner undertook, because they purchased several hundred locations, is an inventory of all of the conditional use permits.
Okay.
They purchased this site with knowledge of the pending CUP application. So they have a system and process to monitor the CUPs when they're up for renewal.
Okay.
And maybe most importantly is having a valid corporate address on file with the city so that when the city sends out notice, it gets to the right person at the company who can fix it themselves or call me to deal with it.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to, update, because we don't keep track of the mailing address of all these holders of the CUP, because as you know, they are transferable, so
Understood.
it's up to users to make sure that they're following the conditions.
Right, and this is one CUP that had slipped through the cracks.
Okay.
Had ConocoPhillips had notice of it, they would have renewed it right away like they did when they were informed. Anyway, so Steve was with ConocoPhillips. All of the corporate policies that have been in place to assure that this premises is a good neighbor, a good operator, and has not caused nuisance impacts, those policies are carrying forward. Now, Steve was with the former owner. He is the same management in place with the new owner, so he can talk about how those policies have carried forward. With respect to the findings, we did address in writing
Okay.
that those findings can be made. I have an extra copy of the written explanation I can provide.
Do we already have that in the file?
It was made part of the application.
Okay, well then, since this is essentially sort of a renewal, although the time period, you don't need to go over those in excruciating detail then.
And
although they are important. Let me ask this. As far as the conditions, are they able to comply with all of the conditions that were imposed on the previous case? They look pretty harmless. Are they aware of all the conditions? If we impose those again, they have any issues with them?
they have no issues, no
Okay.
opposition, and no opposition to the new condition and the 3-year renewal.
Okay. Yeah, normally we'd like to do it for a little longer, but because they didn't renew, probably 3 years is a good time limit. What about the variance and the operation of the car wash? Do you want to let somebody else address that?
Well, we're still, Chris can address that, but we're
Okay.
still evaluating the car wash. Again, since they recently took over the site, I had discussed it with ConocoPhillips. ConocoPhillips had chosen to discontinue operation of the car wash in light of new environmental regulations and whatnot. It just did not make it profitable to do that. The new owner is evaluating whether they will come back to the
Okay.
city and submit the required application to resume the car wash use. They just don't know yet. So I
just
think
don't
that's
know.
the best. Chris can address, but I think that's the best answer we can give.
Do you know how long it's been discontinued for?
It's my understanding between 1 and 2 years.
It's been that long, okay. Okay.
So, with respect to the findings, I won't go over them in detail. Suffice to say, the use has been operated since 1994 with no adverse impacts. With all of the policies in place of the new owner that will continue, we believe that the use will still be a good neighbor, will operate consistent with the requirements of the City of Glendale, the Glendale Zoning Code. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I thought it might be appropriate to, since this is a CUP for the beer and wine, to focus on some of those policies so that you
Right.
can see the training that's in place, and Steve is the best person to present
Okay.
that to you.
All right, great. Thank you. So then Steve can be next?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we also have extra copies of the photographs. I see you have them up there.
Yeah, we don't need extras if we've already got them in the file. That's great.
Steve's going to be talking about some of the training that's in place.
Okay.
And I have an extra copy of that training. And the
Do we have that in the
documentation.
file? Then,
You do not, sir.
okay, then,
So I'll provide one to yourself and one to the case planner, if that's okay?
sure, you can give it directly to the case plan. We only need one copy. Thanks. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Tsu? And again, give your name and mailing address for the record.
Good morning, Steve Sue, 1009 Ridgeside Drive, Monterey Park, California, 91754. I'm a district manager for PCNF, Pacific Convenience and Fuel Retailers. Essentially, none of the operations have changed for the site. We have maintained all our training for all our employees. Before a clerk is permitted to run a register at our site, we take them to an off-site location and spend a full 8-hour day with them going over this convenience store basic training manual. And that covers everything that they are required to know and do in the store itself.
Okay.
Specifically, we go through our tobacco alcohol management program, and we are a retailer that definitely emphasizes the training on that. We have a program in place that they go through the training as well as a test afterwards. In addition, on a monthly basis, we have a third party come in and shop our stores for restricted products, alcohol and tobacco. If a clerk is found selling that to one of, or even stating the price to that person, they are put on corrective action the first time, on administrative leave, and required to go through the training again. And if they fail it a second time, they are terminated. So we are very aware of the issues going on, and we take pride in our record in our sites to make sure that we have the correct training in place.
Okay.
At this site, as Mr. Evans has stated before, there have been no major issues at all. We have, in fact, one of our trainers at that site who trains other stores as well.
Okay.
At this time, I have nothing else further to add.
And you're still evaluating the car wash aspect?
That's correct. I have
Okay.
forwarded the information to our president, and that is under evaluation as far as the future use of that
Okay.
car wash.
Because I think we'd like to know, I don't think we want it sitting idle forever.
I would like to know as well,
yeah,
yes.
one way or the other, we should find out. Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
And finally, Chris Martin. And again, if anyone else wishes to speak on this application, I don't have any more cards, so please fill out a card if you're here for this case.
Good morning,
Martin.
Chris Martin, 15760 Ventura Boulevard, Suite 700, Encino, California, 91346. I don't think I have much more to add to what Bruce and Steve have said regarding the car wash. That is under advisement with senior management, and we should have resolution on that fairly quickly.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything you think we've missed that we should know about? Again, the previous conditions weren't really restrictive. It was just basically keeping it clean and as far as trash area and all that. So
Yeah, I have reviewed those, and
Okay.
we acknowledge all of those.
pretty straightforward. Again, the car wash, I don't know what this is. I'm just coming into this. I don't know what conditions relate to that car wash as far as site development. So again, it's probably time to decide on that. And so just be careful about the signs you display. We do have a sign ordinance. I haven't been out there, so I don't know. Milka, did you happen to notice any blatant violations?
No, but
Okay.
again, as I recall mentioning to you in the past when we were discussing the case,
Right. Neighborhood Services didn't mention anything.
that's true.
so I
Neighborhood
don't know if they
Services had
went
no
out there.
comments, and again,
Okay.
I was not, when I did the inspection, I was not looking
Looking for
for that.
Okay. So again, just be cautious of that, because we don't allow banners, flags, pennant streamers, balloons, fluttering devices, portable signs. So most signs require permits. A lot of these gas stations do have these minor sign violations, so please watch that. If you might want to go check, see what's out there now. That always helps if that type of thing is clean and the
We do have
landscaping
maintenance staff
maintained.
that tours the site on a weekly basis,
Okay.
all of these locations.
Okay. Again, I haven't been out there yet, so I don't know what it looks like, but it's a common thing for service stations to have these types of violations, so just be careful. Okay? Thank you. All right. Seeing that there's no one else, then I'll close this case and take it under submission, and I'll be issuing a decision shortly on that. Thank you for coming. So let me open the next case, which is case number PVAR 2008-017 at 1149 Cordova Avenue. The applicant is AMAC Group, and this is an application for a setback variance to legalize 2 wooden gates, 7 feet and 6 feet 1 inches. And, well, I'm not going to go through that. Anyway, it's 2 wooden gates in the front and street side setback areas, respectively, where gates are not permitted in the minimum 25-foot street front setback and 6-foot street side setback. Apparently, the existing wire fence, the 6-foot-high freestanding pilaster with camera, and the 6-foot-high decorative ladders will be removed. The existing pilasters with walkway lighting will be lowered to less than 5 feet to comply with code, and this is at 1149 Cordova Avenue in the R1 low-density residential zone, and it's like floor area ratio District 2, and that's on Lot 13, Block 11 of the Rossmoyne Tract. So I get the feeling we're going to have a request for a continuance based on recent correspondence. So before I have the case planner give an overview, let me ask Era to come forward and let me know if you want to proceed with this today.
Good morning, Mr. Krause.
Morning.
Ara Vartanian, AMAC Group 639 West Broadway. Unfortunately, due to the nature of the property owner's work, she wasn't able to attend, and also the main presenter, which was going to be Armik Shanazarian, was subpoenaed to court, so I'd like to reschedule this hearing to the next available and convenient date.
Okay, well, this is a pretty simple case. Is there any reason why you can't make the presentation? You're here.
I wasn't prepared for it, and I just don't feel comfortable.
No, it is pretty, it's really a straightforward case. I mean, you've seen the staff report?
I viewed the staff report this morning, but I just feel it's more comfortable if we had a full staff on hand, the property owner, to express her comments.
Okay, organized here.
And this is going to be the first request for a reschedule from us.
Well, let me go over, again, I just arrived on the scene. I'm just filling in for the zoning administrators. But I noticed that this application's been around for a long time. So my question is, had plenty of time to make arrangements to be here. When did Armik find out that he couldn't be here?
About 2 days ago.
And he didn't contact us? Obviously. Well, I don't know. I
guess
said I just found out I'm going to be.
I was just informed this morning, and I tried to come up to speed because last time when it was me that presented the case, there was a discrepancy between what we proposed and the description on the public hearings. So therefore, it was continued to this date.
Well, it wasn't continued. It looks like they did a whole new public notice, I think. That was months ago. So what was the reason for that delay?
On our application, we requested all 3 items, but on the public hearing, it was only 1 item.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this.
The reason of the delay was because we met with various different building officials to compromise with all the different needs, and 2 of the items we've actually brought to be code compliant.
Okay.
Which is the removal of the chain link fence and lowering the pilasters to less than 5 feet, which is allowed in the.
Well, I don't want to get into a hearing if we're not going to have a hearing, but it just seems like that's a long time, and now we have another continuance. Armik could have given us something in writing a couple of days ago if he was really that important for him to be here. When was the let's see, this was originally going to go when? August, okay.
August 27th.
August 27th, looks like. So what happened then? Was
my knowledge that
the hearing actually opened?
It was an open hearing.
The
Correct.
hearing was, the zoning, who was the hearing officer then?
It was Edith Fuentes.
Did she actually open the hearing?
The hearing was open, but due to the discrepancy, she wanted it to be reheard with a
Okay.
new public
New
hearing.
pub- So it was just taken off calendar, basically.
No, the hearing took place.
Well, let me ask. What was
Please inform the audience not to interrupt me.
what was you said you made a presentation?
The first presentation I made, correct. But ever since then, it was Armick that met with different building officials.
But I mean there was actually testimony taken at the hearing?
It was a full-on hearing.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that.
But she couldn't make a decision because of the
Okay.
discrepancy.
Well, that changes things a little bit.
I could do it if you like. I could
Well,
try.
well, that's I was asking because if the hearing hadn't been open, if it was just okay, we're going to redo this, that's one thing. But if we actually took testimony already, then we should continue it. Have the same hearing officer. What are you looking at in terms of time? That
Next
everybody that
convenient
you, because I don't think we're going to be too happy about another continuance.
1 week, 2 weeks, whenever. The next.
Well, let's make it 1 week then. I'm going to ask, I see one other card, so before we open this, I want to ask that person in opposition to this, if they prefer 1 week or 2 weeks, since you have no preference. Either way, they could be here.
Sure. I don't-
Okay.
Just
All
the
right.
next convenient day.
All right.
I'll make
Let me ask Mr. Schrader then, if he could come up, whoever Mr. Schrader is, and ask him what he prefers, 1 week or 2 weeks.
I have to object to you allowing any kind of continuance. This has been going on
Well,
for over
let
2
me just-
years.
that's not what I
And
asked
he's a
you.
liar. He comes up here,
That's not what I
lies, and
asked
says
you.
anything.
I asked you whether you
You've
would
already
prefer-
made a decision based on the words of a liar. I'd like him to prove that his boss has been
Would you
subpoenaed.
please address the question?
What's the question, Mr.
Would you
Kraus?
prefer 1 week or 2 weeks?
I object to there being any kind of a continuance on the hearing
Well,
whatsoever, sir.
Thank you. Okay, then, based on the fact that we've had public testimony with a different hearing officer, I am going to continue this case without further public notice to next week, which is March 25th, 2008, without further public notice. And that's right here at 9:30 at the same time. So again, just advice to the applicants, please make sure that everybody that needs to be here is here, because this is really short notice to not have the hearing, okay? But we would have probably been faced with the same situation anyway if we didn't have the zoning administrator here. But again, in the future, or if you'd let Armick know, don't do that again, okay? Please. All right, thanks. Okay, that concludes today's hearings. It's 10:12 p.m. Today's hearings are closed. Thank you for coming.